I've been thinking for a couple of weeks, is there a celebration that's not about a past event? So I'm thinking, baptisms, anniversaries of weddings, whatever it is, it's something that's already happened, and that's what we celebrate. And that holds true for today's celebration of All Saints. We celebrate all those people who, because of following Christ or following God, have been brought into some experience of being with God now. It's not perfect yet. We haven't had the resurrection of the body, so only Mary, as we know, is body and soul in heaven among the saints. But still, they have some sense of being with God now, And so we celebrate that. And the church gives us, especially in this first reading, we can get a sense of what the Jewish mind understood that celebration to be in the early Christians, So I thought, first of all, it'd be worthwhile to just go through that reading, a couple things about that first reading. Revelation is sometimes, we don't pick up everything in it. The Jew would, of course, and the early Christians understood instinctively all these things, but we need to talk about them a little bit. And so John has two visions. And in the first vision, he here's the number. I heard the number of those who had been marked with the seal, 144,000, marked from every tribe of the children of Israel. And that 144,000, of course, is not meant to be taken literally. There are some non-Catholic denominations that take some of these things literally. But this is not to be done like that. This is not just a big number, but think of it, how important 12 was to the Israelites. 12 sons of Jacob, 12 tribes of Israel. This is not just 12, this is 12 times 12, And it's not just 12 times 12, it's 12 times 12 times 1,000. So the first thing is that much of Israel, a lot of Israel will be able to come in to be with God forever. And there's a little section cut out here, as often happens. It's 12,000 from each tribe of Judah, Manasseh, Joseph, etc. And then he has a second vision. And in this vision, this is not just the Jews receiving this reward, but after this I had a vision of a great multitude, which no one could count, from every nation, race, people, and tongue. And so for us, it's good to remind ourselves, first of all, again, anyone who says they know how many will be saved or are saved or who they are is mistaken. A great multitude that no one could count from every race, tribe. So it's not one people that will be saved, and no one knows it but God. Remember, David got in trouble for taking a census. This is not ours to know who and how many, right? But he sees this great unaccountable number of people saved before the throne, and he notices two things about them. They are carrying palm branches, and they are dressed in white robes. And again, these are things immediately that Israel would know, people of Israel and the early Christians would know what this is referring. Carrying the palm branches would remind them of the Feast of Tabernacles, or booths, sometimes it was called. And this was a feast, it was a harvest feast around this time of year, maybe a couple of weeks ago or something. But, and this is a feast after all the work is done, all the harvest is completed, Lunch is nice, but you got to go back to work, right? Supper's the meal we look forward to. The day's over, work's done, relax, eat, that's the kind of thing, you know. This is a feast after all the work has been completed. And there will be a harvest of fruits as well as grains. So there would be wine at this feast, you know. And the Jew would remember that from the Psalms, that God has given us bread to make man strong, but wine to cheer our hearts, right? And so we start to get an idea. This is the end time. This is the peace of no more work and striving. This is a celebration of great joy. So that gives you a sense of what John is talking about there. And so I was thinking about this feast. So we're celebrating, as I said, all the saints who are in heaven at the moment. But is that all of this celebration? I would say no. Listen to a couple things. We prayed in the collect, Almighty ever-living God, by whose gift we venerate in one celebration the merits of all the saints. And then we will pray this, the prayer over the offerings. May these offerings we bring in honor of all the saints again. And then in the preface, for today by your gift we celebrate the festival of your city, the heavenly Jerusalem, where the great array of our brothers and sisters already gives you eternal praise. And so yes, this is a feast of the past, people who have made it to heaven. But that's not all it is, I don't think. It's a feast of the future and the present in this sense. God lives in eternity. God doesn't have the past, present, future the way we live in, right? So, in some sense, what we're celebrating is all the saints who have come to heaven, are coming to heaven, will be in heaven. And that's hard for us to think about because we're so locked into time, right? But it's not our now, it's God's now. And as I thought about that, it occurred to me we might not just be celebrating here other people who have gone to heaven. This might be our celebration too. As I was praying about that, I saw Jesus standing there, and I asked him, I said, am I there? In your now, am I there? And he just looked at me. He didn't say anything. And as I've mentioned before, as in the Gospels, usually when Jesus doesn't answer, it's because you're asking the wrong question. And so I looked at him for a while, trying to think, okay, what's the right question? And I realized the right question is, am I with him now? Because if I'm with him now, and the next now, and because all we have is now, right? Past is gone, future doesn't exist. So the only question is, am I with him now? And as long as I'm with Jesus now, in my now, I think we are with him in his now. And that changed for me this celebration. St. Bernard has a homily where he says, I love thinking of the saints because it inflames my desire for heaven. I want to be there with them, And I understand that. I think that a lot. I do that meditation. And I would love to meet John Paul II and Mother Teresa and St. Francis. And when I think about it, it gets me excited about, I'd like to be there. I'd love to see the Blessed Mother, But when I think of the possibility that I'm there in his now, That's a whole nother level of excitement for me. And I invite you to try that in your prayer and meditation. Let me go back to the first reading just for a minute. So to finish it off, one of the elders says to him, "Who are these people in the white robes?" And John says, "I don't know." "Who are they? You know." And he says, "These are the ones who have survived the time of great distress." Possibly a better translation would be tribulation. You should see that, but kind of quibbling there. But the Jew understood that there'd be a time of some kind of great tribulation before the reward. And I know we have sufferings and difficulties of life, but that's not what this is about. This is something that has to happen. You have to pass through it in order to get to heaven. And for us, because it's related to the blood of the Lamb, they've washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. What are those white robes? The Jew knew only one person wore white robes, and that was the priest. And so notice everyone around the throne is in a white robe. And the Jew and the early Christian would relate it to a little bit earlier in the book of Revelation. "You have made of them a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they shall reign on the earth." We might look to 1 Peter. "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." This great multitude around the throne doesn't need a priest anymore to offer their worship to God, because each has been given a share in that priesthood. And so everyone in this multitude is offering together this great worship of the one on the throne, because they've all washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. Because the Lamb, Jesus, went through the great tribulation for us. We no longer have to go through that, whatever that is or was. The Lamb did it for us, and now all we have to do is wash our robes in his blood. In other words, participate in him, be with him, enter into him, so to speak, And so today or this week sometime, I invite you to do that meditation. Imagine heaven, and not just imagine all those people who are there now, but imagine heaven at the end. In other words, imagine heaven in that eternal now. And imagine yourself there, and see if that gives you an excitement about heaven. And if it does, I invite you then just to ask this question: am I with Jesus now, in my now? And I'm convinced if we are with Jesus in our now, we are with him in his now.